Okay, thank you very much, everyone. We've now arrived at our final session, the closing session, which we will start with 2 wrap-up talks of 5 minutes each, in which the speakers will try to summarize the main questions or main outcome of the conference, and will also try to discuss potential future research. So the first wrap-up presenter is Raya Muttarak, whom you've met today already. So Raya, I'm really excited to hear you talk.
I'm not, because I have to try to wrap up everything, right? Okay, thank you, Sonja. So since I'm not very original, so I'm going to borrow what Paul has said this morning, because that's one of the few things I understood. I haven't done any courses in economics yet. Okay, so he said, what is not measured does not count. And this is actually, it's a heart of demography, right? Because demography is a discipline that we do empirical analysis, so everything has to be based on data, but also we try to quantify things. And also, based on the quantification, then we try to forecast what can happen in the future. So now we have been working on demographic outcomes, mortality, fertility, and migration, which is relatively pretty much straightforward. We don't need so much definition of what is mortality, which is how people will die. Migration is actually already a bit more complex because we need to define internal migration, international migration. And now we try to capture this field of well-being, and we have learned a lot from all of you to this minute pretty much. So, so typically when we work with demographic outcomes, we are able to use existing data, microcensus data, or of course we have this demographic and health survey, and we can do pretty much what we're interested in. So my question to you is, say if we can add 1 or 2 questions, and so we have to maximize the utility, what would be that question that we could add to the survey? Because obviously we want to do things over time across the countries, so I guess this suggestion would be really helpful. And yeah, and also actually I noticed that we haven't seen that much work actually that come from non-European countries, non-US countries, and is it because we don't have data on that? Yeah, so that might be the limitation in data. So I was wondering also that when we would have more data, so hopefully adding this wonderful question to the surveys, do we have to change our kind of theoretical assumption or models that you would use to do the analysis of well-being? Because what we have learned up until now, it applies to, say, more developed Western European countries. So when we look at, actually the talk of Junji already touched upon that, when we look at happiness and children, for example, would it apply to countries like China, India, or maybe Sub-Saharan Africa? So the relationship that we have found, or the theoretical explanation, probably just doesn't hold true to these countries at all. So that's one point. Another thing that I like to point out is this inequalities and heterogeneities. So in my past life, I was working a lot on smoking, actually. And we had this idea, actually, so we tried to calculate, if we let people keep on smoking, they would die faster. So how much money we can save from that? But so you can imagine that actually how much money the state can save. So you can tell that we have economists as a co-author in this project. But obviously we didn't do this project, in fact, because I did play my sociologist role, because we know that smoking is linked with inequalities. Smokers tend to be less educated, have lower income, maybe live more in deprived areas and so on. So I don't know if it's a good thing or not, but we didn't pursue this project. But we have heard also in this conference that I'm glad to hear that people touch upon the topic of inequalities. And but I'm wondering, when we use the term inequalities or heterogeneity, and we talk about how do we deal with this control or confounder, right? So how do we, because if you want to account for the differences, we have to somehow take into account this confounding effect. I tend to do things very simple. I just do the split analysis. I do subsample analysis. So like the work of David Byrne, for example, I guess if you're interested in differences in age pattern and unemployed people and non-unemployed and employed people, so we probably just not doing the control but split the sample. Would that work? And also another thing actually, so when we talk about these inequalities or heterogeneities, I guess it probably is the same thing, but we use the term differences. For example, gender differences. Whenever the outcome is kind of unfavorable for women, such as maybe income differences, we tend to say it's a gender inequality. When it's okay for women, like women live longer than men, then we say it's heterogeneity. And I think it's these differences make it different in the policy implications. So we have to think a bit more on, do we approach it as inequality issue or maybe just heterogeneity? And lastly, I hope if you haven't picked that up yet, population projections, data sheet, we did the new analysis for 201 countries in the world. So how do we add well-being in our demographic analysis or population forecasting, right? So we, so to do this type, so we need a kind of outcome that is stable across the age. So we have seen that well-being, for example, we don't have yet the clear pattern across the age. Does it have the different type of U-shaped pattern and so on? And I'm not sure how, if we need that information, we need the age patterns by, we need the well-being by different age patterns. So what information can I use? This U-shape or quadratic term and so on. So what would be the approach to get this one effect that I need? Would meta-analysis help, for example? Because this is a typical thing that we started doing when we work with effect of environmental change and migration. There's a ton of literature, it's a mixed effect, so let's do the meta-analysis and see what would be the common effect. So I'm sure that Andrew Clark could answer my question. I give you the floor now, and you're the expert, so I hand it over to Andrew.
Okay, so I met Alexia in Rome in late September, and she said, well, you wouldn't mind just summarising all 36 papers in 5 minutes, would you? But luckily 2 didn't turn up, so we're all right. 3 general points I think I've learned is for what looks like a sort of very tightly defined conference title, incredible number of papers, incredible number of people, I would have predicted 12 papers and 25 people. That's what I would have thought we would have attracted, but really just lots more showing interest in this area. And following on from that, this is one of the areas where sociologists can talk to political scientists, can talk to economists, can talk to demographers, and there aren't that many around of those. So that's a nice thing to do in terms of interdisciplinarity. And my last general thing I learned is, and this was probably the most surprising thing to me, is that most people can get their point across in 12 minutes. I mean, I'm absolutely shocked by that. And I think we have a very clear policy recommendation in terms of how long our seminars are. We don't need an hour and a half, just get the point across much more quickly. So, specific points, I've only got 3 of these, first of which is measurement, you'll be unsurprised to hear, and we are all messed up. We don't know how to measure well-being. What do we need to add to GDP? When do we stop adding things to GDP? And how do we weight them all? We don't know that. That's objective measurement. So let's turn to subjective measurement, like life satisfaction. But then what do we need to add to life satisfaction? Health, something else, inequality. Do we end up double counting? Health is in life satisfaction anyway, but then do we need to somehow add it in again? And what does that mean for weighting? I don't know. I'm actually surprised at this conference, and actually quite relieved, nobody used the word eudaimonia. Thank you. I usually get that one all the time. And of course, with all these different measures, it might not matter if our policy variables are just correlated in the same way, with experienced utility, happiness, life satisfaction, GDP plus, HDI plus, then it's okay. We can intervene on something and we'll do well, no matter what the measure is. So how can we choose between the well-being measures? I've got two ideas here. The first one was a cage fight. I thought that would be quite good to do. I pay money to watch that. But slightly, perhaps more practically, I think we should do beauty contests in predicting future outcomes. So let's take experienced utility, eudaimonia, life satisfaction, what have you. Let's predict individual future divorce, the decision to have children, your mortality, or following on from the presentation we just saw, voting. We know that life satisfaction predicts voting, a very nice paper by George Ward in the American Journal of Political Science. Does it predict voting better than experienced utility, or eudaimonia, or whatever? What do people really want? We don't know. So let's see what they do, and then match it back to what they've just told us. Okay. My second general point is whose well-being, and this was especially yesterday. Does some people matter more than others? Very, very thin ice, this one. How can we treat people as being more important than others? Well, one way we can do it is look at inequality of well-being. We don't just add up income to make GDP. We think about inequality as well. Here we've just been adding up well-being to produce average life satisfaction or whatever. It's arguably not good enough, and we need to look at the distribution as well. And this was a point that came up repeatedly yesterday. Can we make our countries happier by killing off unhappy people? Or the poor, or the badly educated, or the sick, or something like that. And it's actually, I mean, it sounds kind of funny, but it's a real question. How do we do this? How do we compare country averages? And the American poet Kenneth Patchen once wrote a very nice poem called Do the Dead Know What Time It Is? And I would add, do the dead know how happy they would have been were they to have been alive? And we do need to do demographic calculations based on that kind of criteria. Let me finish with policy. I had a load of points here, but Paul's covered quite a lot of them. That it's totally insufficient to say that Z is important for well-being. That is just such an unhelpful thing to know. We need to know whether we can change Z, and then we need to know how much it costs in terms of cost effectiveness relative to other things we can do with the money that we would invest in that. And this is something that Paul's been working on quite hard over the past couple of years. To do that correctly, we need to know adaptation. Do you get used to higher income? Yes. Do you get used to being disabled? Don't know. I mean, these things we need to know. Do you get used to climate change? Maybe in 20 years' time we all won't mind because the technology will have changed and we will have adapted. But we need to know these things. Spillovers. Does my income make you unhappy? I'm almost finished. My income makes you unhappy. I mean, obviously, that's true. Does my weight make you unhappy or happy? Does my unemployment affect you positively or negatively? We need to take that. Education. Much to my disappointment, average education is a negative externality. People are less happy in highly educated countries given their own education. Okay, the last point before Sonja kicks me off is people do the strangest things. They really do. I mean, just looking at some of the papers we've talked about, people have kids. People think retirement is good for them. People smoke. People have fertility treatments that make them systematically unhappy. Why are they doing all these things? Is it because they miswant, therefore they don't have the right information? Can we use nudges to change these things, such as savings? Or actually, are we using the wrong well-being measure? And this brings me back to my first point. So do children make you unhappy, but they increase your eudaimonia? Is retirement dissatisfying, but it increases your moment-to-moment experienced utility? And that takes us back to the cage fight that I proposed earlier. But there's obviously a great deal to be done, and we're going to have it all sorted out by next year's meeting.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Before we go to the poster award ceremony, which I'm sure everyone is super excited about, are there some additional remarks from the audience concerning the content of the conference or main questions? No? You're happy with the wrap-up? Okay, well then let's go to the award ceremony. I ask all the organizers on stage. So Raya, Wolfgang, Alexia. Thanks again to all the poster presenters, and thank you very much to the judges for picking the 4 poster winners. I will read them out in alphabetical order according to the first author, so there is no actual ranking. The first poster prize goes to Radoslav Anzak for the paper Inequalities in Subjective Well-Being Using Life Satisfaction and an Evaluated Time Index. Okay, well, it's a pity. No prize or none. But I do see that there are some people here from the second poster award winning poster, which is for Bruno Arpino, Valeria Barbone, and Hela De Val for their poster Contacts with Children and Subjective Well-Being. Do the relationship differ for older migrants and natives in Europe? Can all the authors come and say? Later with all the organizers, so you can just wait here for the others. Yes. So there are only 2 prizes left. Ooh, this is exciting. So the third poster award goes to Malgorzata Mikucha for the paper Do Parenthood and Partnership Protect Life Satisfaction in the Old Age? And the last poster award goes to Jiejingxi, Jose Manuel Abuerto, Pekka Martikainen, and Alison van Raalte for their paper Beyond Differences in Means, Rising Mortality Stratification Among Income Groups in Finland. Congratulations. So quickly take a group photo and then we're back with you.
So much has already been said. Just to remind you that like every year we try to get the best papers, including papers based on the posters, not only the speeches, to be published in the Vienna Yearbook of Population Studies, which is a refereed and in the meantime quite well-cited publication series. So you will get a reminder, and we hope that relatively soon, by next spring, let's say by March or so, we can have first version of this paper that will then go through the reviewing process. This is just to remind you, you will be contacted again about this. Otherwise, before Alexia says the very final words, just thank you all for coming, for being here for these 2 intensive days. I think it was said it was a really very interesting conference, and thanks to all of you.
Let me just add, I think it was about a year and a half ago when we started to plan the conference, and I told you already yesterday in the beginning, we were really not sure how we can attract people to this topic, which is maybe not very specific to demographer yet, but I think after these 2 days I feel it's really kind of the new topic. I mean, I think we are really now on our agenda in demography. We are talking to economists, we are talking to population scientists, we are talking, I think, to sociologists, and we are really contributing something. And I really hope that many of you contribute, as Wolfgang said, to the Vienna Yearbook, which really will increase our well-being here at the Vienna Institute of Demography a lot. And let me also thank all the chairs of all the sessions, all the presenters, all the discussants, all those people whom we gave a specific role, like wrapping up, like Andrew, Raya, etc. So the discipline was excellent, and I think it's just wonderful, and I hope that we will meet in another occasion on well-being to really make a really huge impact on, I think, the science with our research. Thanks to everyone, and again, thanks to Sonja, thanks to the whole administrative team. Without you, it would not really have functioned, everything, and this is our best investment into human capitalizing. Thanks a lot again, and have a good journey home, and see you soon again, I hope.